Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Pleasure to have you here with us in beautiful Cannes. Maybe you could begin with a brief introduction to your film, The Innocent. What can people expect if they see your film?
Alors l'innocent, c'est un...
I think that The Innocent is in between three different genres in a way. It's detective story, romantic comedy, and it's family detective story.
Obviously, it's not your first film that you've directed, but why did you decide on this story for this film? And I believe it had quite a personal inspiration.
Alors, je me suis inspiré d'une chose...
The personal reference is in the fact that my mother was animating some theatre workshops in jail, and I got acquainted with men and women whose story were quite extraordinary, and I thought it was a good starting point to make a Romanesque film and to create a story.
You act in all of your films. What might be some of the challenges of being both behind and in front of the camera? And how would you suggest maybe you explore alter egos, let's say, for yourself in your films?
Bon, bizarrement, ça redouble
It
de
doubles the
plaisir.
pleasure, being in front and behind the camera. People believe that it's quite complicated to do it, but since I love playing with the actors, it's somehow two pleasures in one.
And can you talk us through your cast and how do you go about choosing who you're going to have in your films?
Mais généralement,
I normally do not choose actors on an individual basis, but what I like to choose is the cinematic couples, because as a viewer myself, as a moviegoer, I think that couples are an added value. They are iconic, and if there's a chemistry between two characters, it's all for the better. And therefore I realize that Roche Dizet and Anouk, who plays my mother, work perfectly together, and they are touching, they had something more. And the same is for Noémie and myself. It was almost a siblings relationship.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about tone and genre in your film. There seems to be a blend of sort of family comedy, heist, there's a meta aspect to it, and in particular the kind of tone of irony. I think something you've referred to before as banter à la française. Can you tell us a bit about that?
je ne voulais pas, comme le film était
When I was little, I had on my bedside a book by Peter Brook that said that the devil is the enemy is boredom. The devil is boredom, and that's what I fear the most in cinema. As a viewer myself, I don't want to get bored when I go and watch a film, and therefore I think that changing the register, changing the genre of the film would probably not annoy the viewer, and it would create a fun base in changing all the time throughout the development of the story. Although I want to preserve a sort of thin line that combines all the different aspects of the film, and the thin line is the feeling element.
Et aussi, c'est parce que je voulais...
And since I use genre as archetypes, in the case of the heist film or the romantic family, I allow the viewers to play with the film as if they were playing a game, and therefore there is this joyful, playful dimension that I'm keen in developing.
And ultimately, what do you hope that people will take away from watching your film?
Peut-être
Maybe the memory of these two very powerful women.
What does it mean to you to have your films in Cannes, and how do you see the festival as a platform to celebrate cinema?
Ce qui est fantastique avec le Festival de Cannes, c'est que c'est un
It's a
festival...
fantastic film festival, Cannes. It offers fantastic opportunities because it's an international festival where you have audiences coming from all over the world. And when you make a film, your goal is to be able to show it to the wider range of spectators as possible. People with different cultures that might notice differences, but also similarities in the stories that are told. And yesterday my film was shown in the big hall here in Cannes, 2,000 viewers. It's almost like a living piece, living play.
I also wanted to ask about your kind of inspirations as a filmmaker and how perhaps your experiences growing up with film, you know, in your family and acting in films from such a young age has impacted you and your vision as a filmmaker.
Bah, c'est-à-dire que comme j'ai travaillé avec beaucoup de...
I have worked with different filmmakers, and instead of asking myself, oh, I'm going to grab this from that director and that from the other, I learned that each of them has their methods, and this is something that I treasure very much. You have to be able to build your own working method.
Même si on travaille surtout...
And since when you choose to work with genre, there are very specific codes that you have to respect, because they also recall and remind memories in the audiences. You work with that aspect, but even more so with the actors, and working with the actors is an aspect of filmmaking that I like very much. The more I work with them, the more I like to let them free to express themselves, and I realize when they are embarrassed by things, when they want to be free, when I can help them, and this is something I really love.
I also wanted to just ask you about the other film that's obviously here in Cannes playing competition, Forever Young, Les Amandiers. Maybe you can just quickly tell us a little bit about your character in that and the appeal of that project.
Les Amandiers racontent la
Forever
création...
Young tells the story of a theatre school in Nanterre that was founded and run by Patrick Chéreau, that we can define as the Molière of our time. He was a very important stage artist of our time. We are talking about the beginning of the 80s, a time when AIDS was appearing and there was an urgency to live and to be able to express ourselves, you know, a fever and a hunger for creativity, a fervor, and that's what the film shows us.
And so the third time you've worked with Valeria in 15 years. What's that relationship been like as actor and director? And she's become incredibly prolific. So how have you seen her work evolve?
Là, c'est la première fois qu'elle ne
It's the
jouait
very
pas.
first time that she's not acting in a film of hers, a film that stages her experience when she was in her 20s and she was starting moving, you know, the first steps in this craft of acting and directing, and it's very touching considering what she's staging in this film. It's a different film from the others that she's made. It's almost a period piece in a way. And it was very inspiring to know that we were staging something that she truly experienced, and we did that with a great deal of passion, as she put in her film. And I like the so-called Italian spirit of Valeria, which is made of an Italian irony based on passion and derision.
And just very quickly, do you know what you might work on next? And could there be an English language project on the horizon?
Ah, j'ai joué le roi Louis XIII.
I played a Louis XIII on a project that is on Three Musketeers, and I hope it will appeal the English-speaking audiences.
Thank you so much. It's
No,
been such a
thanks to
pleasure.
you.
Thanks for sharing all that, and enjoy the rest of your
Thanks
time here
to
in
you.
lovely
Thank you
Cannes.
very much for your time.